Hey everybody, so there is a really interesting situation going on between the LA Kings and Ilya Kovalchuk right now. Basically, the Kings have benched Kovalchuk. They've said that you are not going to play for the foreseeable future. Kovalchuk's really struggling this season, and it looks like his time in LA is about up. So that leaves trade as probably the most likely option of what's going to happen with this situation. So today I wanted to talk about if there are any potential trade partners who would even want Ilya Kovalchuk at this point, and if there are, who could he potentially help out this year. So before we get into the video, I just quickly want to remind everyone to hit that like button and give this video a thumbs up. That greatly helps out the channel and is very much appreciated. And if you're new to the channel and happen to be watching, please hit that subscribe button down below. Let's keep this channel growing and getting bigger every day. So thank you, and let's get into it now. So Ilya Kovalchuk basically has been told that he's done with the Kings. They're not going to play him. He can continue to practice, but they're not going to be putting him in the lineup anytime soon based on what I've read about this. So it's a really weird, interesting situation, but trade does seem like the most likely ending to this here, with him just going to another team, because, I don't know what else the Kings would do. He's making $6.25 million per year. He's still got the rest of this year on the contract and next season. So I would think that even with a trade, the Kings are going to have to eat some money on this and retain salary, because nobody else is going to even touch Kovalchuk at $6.25 million against the cap. So right off the bat, the Kings are going to be eating money on this and retaining salary, I would think. I don't really see any way around that. But basically, this is happening because, A, the Kings stink, and 2, Ilya Kovalchuk stinks now. He's not good anymore. He's 36 years old, 17 games played this year. He only has 3 goals and 9 points. He's a -10 on the season. He's not good anymore. Last year, he only had 16 goals in his first year back in the NHL. It was -26 on the season. I mean, Kovalchuk he's not a star player anymore, not even close. However, I do think that there could be a trade market for him. Certainly not at $6.25 million per year. Nobody is going to want to pay that. But if the Kings retain some of that salary and knock the cap hit down to maybe about $4 million, and you have a good team looking for scoring depth heading into the playoffs, I think Kovalchuk could be a third-line option to bring with you on a playoff run, and I think that would probably be the most likely outcome of what's going to happen here, is that a playoff team at some point this season looking for scoring depth might make a move for Kovalchuk. Obviously, these are just rumors. There's no guarantee of this, but it's possible. So I want to go through and look at some teams that I think might be interested in the services of Ilya Kovalchuk, even though he's a struggling 36-year-old making way too much money. For the sake of this, I am going to completely cut the cap out. I'm not talking about money. Making this work financially is going to be a complicated process for any team involved, because most of your playoff teams are very tight against the cap. Obviously, you have good players and are a good team that you have to pay those players a good amount of money. So a lot of the good teams in the league are close to the salary cap and not going to just be able to add Ilya Kovalchuk without subtracting anything. So that complicates the situation even more. But I'm going to throw money out of this completely in general and just talk about teams who I look at their roster and think they could add him as a third-line depth scorer, and he could potentially help them in a playoff run. And the first team that comes to mind for me in the Eastern Conference is the New York Islanders. The Islanders are a team that's off to a very, very good start. They're 12-3-1 on the season. They certainly look like a playoff team. They were a playoff team last year. They're one of the best, if not the best, defensive teams in the league. They don't have a lot of star power as far as goal scoring goes. They kind of do it by committee. They obviously have Matthew Barzal But other than that, they don't have any real elite goal scorers. They kind of have, a bunch of 20, 25 goal guys who all kind of chip in, and then they play great team defense. I think adding someone like Ilya Kovalchuk could help them just in adding another offensive player, another guy who can chip in 10 or so goals and maybe, chip in 5 or 6 on a playoff run and help the team out. Again, it would be as in a bottom 6 role as a third or fourth liner. But I do see where with the Islanders in their lack of high-end scoring talent, I think, he could help just by chipping in and being a depth scorer for them. Another team I look at that certainly I think could use Kovalchuk potentially would be the Philadelphia Flyers. Philadelphia is a team that's 10-5-2 to start the season. They've looked pretty good so far. And they're just a team that I think, they're playing some younger players. Some of their young players are playing very, very well, but they're playing some other borderline AHL guys. And I think just adding that depth of having Kovalchuk there in Philly could be a nice addition for them. Again, a bottom 6 role, but someone who could just maybe chip in a few goals here and there. A veteran guy, too, who's been around for a long time. I think Kovalchuk to Philly could be an interesting idea. Another team in the Eastern Conference that comes to mind is the Montreal Canadiens. Montreal's another team that certainly isn't loaded with scoring. And you look at that roster and you're like, they definitely could improve that forward group. And I think adding Kovalchuk would give them a veteran guy who really, could give you some scoring out of your bottom 6, especially I think he'll be better if he gets out of LA. I mean, part of the problem with Kovalchuk, he's not the player that he used to be, obviously. Don't get me wrong about that. But playing on such a garbage team like the Kings doesn't help. So if you could get him in a lineup with some decent other players, you might see the scoring come back a little bit from Kovalchuk. And I think Montreal is a place where, throw him on that third line and all of a sudden, you might get some goals out of him. And lastly, a team from the Eastern Conference that I think could potentially make a move for Kovalchuk could be the Carolina Hurricanes. They're a team that's been very up and down this season. They're 10-7-1 right now, slightly out of a playoff spot by a couple of points. But again, we'll be looking to be a playoff team this year. I think, losing Justin Williams, you lose that veteran guy. You lose someone who had 53 points for you last year. I think you could bring in Kovalchuk maybe as a fourth liner on that team. They're already a very talented team, but, so adding just a depth scorer, someone with some offensive talent and upside into that bottom 6 or onto that fourth line, I think could be a decent move for the Hurricanes, and he could definitely help them down the stretch. So those are some Eastern Conference teams that come to mind, especially the Islanders and Philadelphia, Montreal, and the Hurricanes. Moving out west, what about Colorado? Colorado is a team that right now is missing 2 of their 2 best wingers in Mikko Rantanen and Gabe Landeskog, although both of them will be back as the season goes along. But Colorado, looks for sure like a playoff team. They're 11-5-2 to start the year. They're one of the best teams in the Western Conference, even while missing their, very, very important players from their first line. If you look at Colorado, they have a pretty good forward group to begin with. But if you added Ilya Kovalchuk to that fourth line, he could give you some scoring depth that they don't have right now. And that could help, maybe be a little less reliant on that top line. And now with this year, they've put a very good second line together as well. I think just from a depth perspective, Kovalchuk could be a good add in Colorado, And, he's a veteran guy. Colorado is led by a lot of their young players. I think, bringing a guy who's been around the block the way Ilya Kovalchuk has could be a decent move for that locker room as well. So Colorado stands out as a potential buyer of Ilya Kovalchuk in the Western Conference. Another team that I really think could make a move for Kovalchuk would be the Arizona Coyotes. That's a team that, doesn't have that top, similar to the Islanders in the Eastern Conference. The Coyotes play good team defense, get very good goaltending, and they win defensively. They don't have a lot of that top-tier offensive talent. Adding Kovalchuk as a depth guy to a group like Arizona, I think could be a really, really nice move for them. And if he chips in 10 goals for the Coyotes, that's a big win for Arizona. So that's a team that I think could potentially go for something like that. And maybe the only other team, the West, I don't think would have as much interest. I think there's more teams in the East that would be interested in this kind of player. But another option maybe in this, when you take salary cap into account, you're going to say I'm dumb, and there's no way, because this is a team that's not in a great cap situation. But the Calgary Flames, again, Calgary, added Milan Lucic this offseason, who's not giving them much anything offensively at all. Think, Calgary's a team that relies a lot on the Goodrow, Monahan, Lindholm line for their scoring. I think if they could add someone like Kovalchuk into that bottom six group and maybe get, a few more goals out of their bottom six, that could help the Flames in the Western Conference and just help them a little bit with offensive depth. But once you take salary cap, well, for this video, I wasn't talking about money anyway, because it would be difficult money-wise for any of these teams to do this, with the exception of probably Philadelphia or Colorado, who aren't that close to the cap. But yeah, those are the teams that I really think could potentially have a legitimate interest in Ilya Kovalchuk from the LA Kings. And at this point, I think Kovalchuk's probably going to get traded somewhere. I don't think, he's going to play again for the Kings. He's probably not very happy that the Kings are just benching him like this. Obviously, retirement or going back to Russia is always an option. He's done it before, back in 2013 when he left for Russia for the first time. He's done it before, but I don't see him playing with the Kings again. I think it's most likely that his NHL rights are going to get traded. And those are some teams that I think could potentially be interested in adding him as a depth scorer for a playoff run this year. And this is just a situation that we're going to have to watch and see what happens as it goes along. So with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.